Started my first startup in '97. The world told me I was insane.
Our goal is creating future economies that are more regenerative and sustainable.
Something didn't match up. Why hasn't this become the next big thing? And that's where we invested.
The whole purpose of achieving anything in life is measurement.
We have a really exciting session scheduled for you guys here. So this is going to be the impacts of construction technology on President Biden's infrastructure bill, led by Mr. Omar Alhammouri. He's with InstaCEI, and he is the founder and CEO. The use of construction technology will provide more efficient and transparent methods to help stakeholders maximize their ROI for the increased funds that will be used to rebuild our communities. So Omar is going to go over some of the impacts that he sees that this infrastructure bill has had. And I'll give you a brief introduction of Omar. He's a former civil engineer turned entrepreneur. And before founding InstaCEI, Omar started his career as a transportation engineer and worked on both design and construction projects for city, county, and state projects. So I will, with that, turn it over to Omar. And please, and we've had just Michael join in. So let me give a brief intro of Michael as well. So Michael is the Chief Strategy Officer of Microgrids Diversified Holdings. Michael has more than 2 decades of experience in delivering strategic solutions across the engineering, transportation, and technology industries. He holds multiple patents leveraging behavioral, demographic, and spatial data in various ways to improve predictions, forecasting patterns, site selection, and to assist in critical infrastructure protection and risk mitigation. Just prior to joining MDH, Michael was director at Burns & McDonnell, 1898 & Co., and a large management consulting engineering firm where he helped Fortune 100 clients develop adaptive strategies, enhance corporate innovation, and improve strategic planning. Much of his recent work has been in the area of autonomous vehicles, electrification, and digital transformation. Thank you very much, Omar and Michael, for joining this panel, and we're looking forward to hearing your insights. I will just remind all of our attendees that we have a Q&A and chat over in the right side of your screen, so feel free to add your questions there, and we'll be sure to leave time towards the end to answer those questions. Thank you, gentlemen, very much, and I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the introduction. This was great. Well, again, I'm very pleased to join you guys and maybe show you some of the insights that we have seen so far in the construction industry when it comes to technology and just managing multiple projects. I know it's the end of the day, so we're going to try to make it a short presentation. So again, as you might all know, the Joe Biden administration is pushing for a new investment in the infrastructure nationwide, and they're thinking about deploying $550 billion specifically for about 173,000 miles of roadway and major highways, as well as about 45,000 of bridges that are in a very bad conditions. So, but the question again becomes: are we ready to deploy a historic investment? I guess in our communities. How can we, maximize the use of those funds? How can we be smart about the spending of those funds? How can we, stretch the taxpayer money? And I think, we have to look at the current systems that we currently have. From my personal experience, especially on horizontal construction projects, which I think this space has been lagged by software innovation. If you compare it with vertical construction, a lot of projects are being run by paper and pen, and there's a lot of manual field operations, like spray painting marks on the pavement, stakes in the ground, manual data collections, using pen and paper. So there's a lot of manual processes that happen on a lot of the horizontal construction job sites. So the question becomes, before we spend a lot of money, are we ready to deploy this much of investments? And Michael, just feel free to join at any minute, as I present.
Sure, thanks.
One of the good things about just the bill, I think a lot of engineering companies, have been kind of lobbying for some funds for infrastructure construction technology. I think the bill has about $100 million for use in construction technology for 3D modeling and project documentation, digital project documentation, and those funds are going to be spent over 5 years. I don't think they have published any specific about the funds, but we look forward to more information about how can we utilize those funds to leverage the technology on horizontal construction. So from my experience, working with InstaCEI and talking to customers, I think there's been some kind of struggle in adopting new construction tech. I think there's a few factors here. We're going to talk about a few of them. If you were in the Construction Tech Innovation Summit panel, I think we discussed a few of those struggles that people have when it comes to adapting to new construction tech. So one of the things that I would say a lot of people make on just choosing new software is a lot of IT managers just want to deploy new software solutions instead of just thinking about how can we fix our pain points or what kind of pain points we have, and kind of just pick on the best solution for those kind of pain points instead of just deploying lots of new technology and new IT solution just to say they're actually staying with up-to-date technology. So basically, just before you begin looking at IT solutions, there's lots of them. Think about your pain points. Talk to field inspectors. Talk to project managers. Just do a lot of surveys and see what kind of pain points you have, and then just select the best technology that might kind of fix those pain points.
Hey, Omar, that brings up a good point. A lot of times, engineering and construction companies, they're inundated with new technologies, and those technologies, sometimes they seem really attractive, but unless they're replacing or improving upon something that's happening manually or analog, it's really easy to sort of get sucked in by the shininess of it. But it's really, if you're not replacing something that you're doing manually or analog today, with technology that improves that process, you're going to run into all kinds of problems through the adoption of those technologies. So you're going to run into change management issues, communication issues. People are going to be frustrated. They're not going to use that technology, and the value is going to be tough to prove out. So something to consider when you're looking at new technologies. What problems are they solving today and improving upon?
Sure thing. And also the other thing is, I have seen it in companies, even big companies. Like there's offices in different regions and teams in different regions. They're kind of disconnected when it comes to the tech they use. Like for example, the Houston office in a certain company might use some kind of tech different from the Dallas office, and just as an example, I guess, and that doesn't promote collaboration. Is some companies, they kind of just cherry pick some kind of technology for maybe a small unit or maybe a specific trade versus just looking at the whole organization. How can we pick something that could improve collaboration and just have maybe like one platform that could be used across the whole organization? I think this is something that also going to encourage the use of the product if you kind of encourage collaboration between different disciplines and different teams. And also we talked about earlier, I guess, we talked about the culture, I guess. Just communicate the value of the technology throughout, from the top of the company to the bottom of the company, everyone at the office, in the field, just show them a clear value and defined value of the technology. What is it going to happen if you use it? What kind of increase in productivity, maybe safety improvements? So have a defined message, I guess, for the value of the product before you start implementing and just throwing a lot of technology on different teams. And I think other thing is, as we kind of transform into the digital era, I think one aspect people that kind of not really think about a lot of the times is security. I haven't seen any teams that spend a lot of time just educating their end users about security, setting up multi-factor authentications and kind of using like a strong password, those little things, or maybe what kind of backups are you doing with the tech that you actually pick. So think about just also communicating the security aspect of it, not only the value proposition, but also just when you pick a new technology, just pay attention to security issues that might happen in any certain time. Michael?
Oh no, you're doing fine.
Okay. So, how can we help, I guess, in the execution of the infrastructure bill? I think we have to look at, all different aspects that happen on any given project. You have hardware, software, and, services. So what, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard the new term construction connected. What we need, I think we need to unify people, processes, and services all in one platform to kind of just would it be from the design phase to the construction phase to the operation and maintenance phase. I think this all need to connect it, I guess, in one platform. So, as a result, I mean, there's lots of good values about, using construction technology, and I'm sure, you have seen some studies that, talk about the increase in productivity. You have better visibility and transparency between all project stakeholders, whether it be the project owner or the GC or, the supervision firm, and also, reduction in cost. I think there's also, acceleration in project delivery, and which is going to lead into winning more projects. So those are, some of the values that we usually see when using construction tech. This is it for us. As I said, it's going to be a short presentation, and we're happy to take any questions.
Omar, we've got a question here. It says, can you go into more detail about the public funding sources from this bill and how a developer can access these incentives? And I think unfortunately, the answer to both of those is we don't know, and we don't know. This is a huge bill and a big package. And go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I wish I had more information, but there's a lot of unknowns, I guess, about those bills and the funds, I guess, for construction tech. So yeah, I wish I had that answer.
Well, my question for you guys, what's the timeline looking like? This pushing through Congress, and what do you see as the timeline for funding getting approved? Are there things that developers, contractors, and other AEC organizations can do kind of to get ahead and make sure that they can earmark access to some of this funding?
Yeah, like we just mentioned, I think the timeline is still kind of unclear about when those funds are going to be deployed. But hopefully, we're going to keep up with the news and see how we can kind of just capture those opportunities in the market. But yeah.
What about former infrastructure bills that have been passed throughout the history in the United States, and what sort of impact have these bills had and this funding had on our civil infrastructure, on vertical construction? Do you see any similarities and differences from previous bills that have passed in previous decades? In comparison?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we've seen historically is that that projects that are as close to ready as possible tend to be the initial beneficiaries of this. So it's very hard to spin up sort of the spending of these types of initiatives for things that are conceptual. And the same goes for the actual horizontal or vertical construction as with the technology. I mean, the related technology becomes even more difficult, and a lot of times it manifests in additional allowed spend for those types of projects. So instead of being direct to those technology companies, it allows for those types of public infrastructure projects to be funded at a greater rate to incorporate the use of that innovative technology on those projects, as opposed to, I mean, I know like providers of technology a lot of times think, hey, that'd be great if the government, just went direct to us and we can solve some problems using technology. But very frequently it goes through to the projects as well.
And going back to the question about the vertical construction, or maybe what kind of benefits, I think, a lot of times cities and county governments or agencies, they do like planning for projects for 25, 30 years, I guess, to kind of expand the community. So those funds are, just going to help kind of accelerate those projects to maybe just, introduce new roads, new highways, connect communities. And as a result, you're going to see a lot of investment in real estate and commercial projects.
How much emphasis is being placed on smart districts and smart cities, and what sort of technologies should developers, engineering firms, contractors implement that would give them a better shot of being noticed as innovative and helping to digitize our cities, which may be in line with the government's thoughts of how we improve our civil infrastructure and improve our built environment?
I think that's a really good question. Smart cities initiatives, smart vehicle initiatives, like these things have been around for a long time. It's really interesting to see what I sometimes perceive as a disconnect between those initiatives and actually, the solution reaching the end user, the communities. Vehicle to vehicle communication and autonomous vehicles. The Federal Highway Administration, US DOT have been researching this forever. And then a company like Tesla just does a version of it, right? And so I think that there's something to be said about that just doing that sometimes grasps more traction than the formal initiatives. So I would say that applies not only to the Teslas out there, but also the AEC firms, the construction firms out there. Don't necessarily wait until standards are developed or things are blessed from on high as being sort of a viable technology or approach. Find something that makes sense and go with it. The other thing that I see a lot for the AEC industry is that the firms themselves are always looking for technology as a differentiator. So I want to use technology that's going to allow me to win more projects, right? Or I want to look like the most innovative firm so that I can get this job. But I think that the more attractive way for construction companies and engineering companies to use technology is to actually, figure out how it can apply to make what you do better, as opposed to sort of the sexy marketing side of a differentiator. We're going to pick firm A over firm B because they're technology savvy. Like, actually think about how to apply it.
How much innovation do you see coming from the U.S. government? You brought up Tesla, and I think of SpaceX, and then I think of how NASA really led this space race, and then you have private companies that are now doing it cheaper and more efficient. At this point, in the year 2021, where do you see the government playing a role in innovation? Are they still playing an active role there, or really just leaving that to private industry?
The government, so both, but the government sees itself as playing an active role, but in actuality, they rarely do. It's really hard for the government to play a direct active role in things. They're just not very good at it. But they can influence megatrends, right? And this, if you think of this infrastructure bill as a megatrend, and how it's got things in it that will increase inertia of things. As an example, like electric vehicle adoption, right? There's money in this bill for electric vehicle infrastructure, and that will help the adoption. But sometimes, we need to step back and think, okay, this is not the government giving out a bunch of money and we can like put our hand up and get some of it and go do it. I mean, what's more likely to happen is, and there will be money, but for most companies, it's hard to access that money. But if you think of it as a mega trend that can help infer how you make your decisions and how strategic you are, that's a lot more interesting. Because think of it like a rising tide that's going to lift all the boats. This type of infrastructure bill will do that. It will have that effect. And so I like to think of it more like that than as something that's going to be like a lightning bolt that's going to totally blow a company up or something like that. And the same, like you made the SpaceX to NASA analogy, or the Tesla to the US, the US DOT FHWA. It's the same thing with the smart cities. That stuff's all great, but look, at the end of the day, and even for electric vehicle infrastructure, the problem isn't are electric vehicles going to come. The problem is, or the opportunity is lying in things like, hey, guess what? Electric vehicles are going to come, and there isn't enough transmission and distribution capacity to deliver the electricity to the homes where those vehicles are going to live. So if I'm a construction company or engineering company, I'm like, hey, that's really attractive to me because I know that there's going to be a huge boom in the design and construction of transmission and distribution lines. That's going to happen, 100%. And so that's not the same as saying there's money in this infrastructure bill that I'm going to get directly. But if I'm a construction company and I'm positioning myself there, I'm going to grow.
You bring up a good point about the microgrid, right? We're seeing a lot of end user solutions with EV charging and power delivery to the cars themselves. But, I'm seeing that we really need to overhaul our electrical microgrids and that infrastructure. So what are you seeing happen? Are you seeing leaders that are working on this? And, what are the biggest obstacles and really step changing the power delivery and how we're distributing power to solve these problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem that has so many facets to it, right? Because you have electric utilities that are, the gatekeeper for so much of that. But then you have like small municipal utilities that are popping up. There are storage. Storage is like the biggest problem in that space. But if you look at the utilities themselves and what they're doing and the moves that they're making, they're becoming far more savvy at an accelerated rate. I mean, just look at electric utilities and see how many technology people they've hired. And how like now all of a sudden you have electric utilities that are hiring people from AWS. Right, and that would never happen. A utility would never hire a technology person from AWS or from Microsoft or something like that. And so it's interesting to see them sort of changing, and that's that type of transformation because they see that trend coming. And so kind of rounding it back to the infrastructure bill, these are the kinds of mega trends that you see happening that will influence how that happens. And I think that. It's not a matter of if people will build electric vehicles. It's a matter of when and what technologies are going to be stood up quickly enough to do it. And microgrids are that's a great example, right? Where the microgrid market in itself right now is actually kind of nascent. But the fact of the matter is utilities are like big Leviathan organizations. And they themselves are going to struggle with scaling up in enough time. So microgrids are a great option to come in there and help fill some of that void.
Omar, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, Michael, I think he hit on a lot of those topics, I guess.
Jason, I see you're still here sharing your video on the panel. Did you have a question that you'd like to ask?
No, I'm just listening in. I'm just starting at a new gig, and this is part of the stuff that we work on. So just trying to catch up.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining. We're going to reserve the video here for the panelists. So if you wouldn't mind, if you can just hit that leave button, you'll still be in the session. And what I want to do is also remind all of our attendees just to ask any questions that you've got within the chat and the Q&A. We still have about a half an hour. So I want to make sure that you guys are utilizing Michael and Omar's time. These guys are experts in this area. So any questions that you may have, feel free to pose those. Omar, any other things that you're working on or questions you'd like to ask of Michael to further this discussion here?
Yeah, sure thing. So, we going back to the technology, I guess, you have a lot of, on any project, different stakeholders, right? The project owner is a government entity. A lot of times, we see some kind of objections from government entities to kind of innovate and adapt to new technologies. And the reason is because changing policies might take a long time, and it's kind of delaying, the process of, new startups or maybe new innovative technology startups to kind of, push for changes. And, so I guess the question becomes, how can we overcome those challenges to, change government agencies' mindset? Tell them, hey, look, you could innovate faster. You could, adapt to a new environment faster.
So there's a question here from KP that says, how do we think about technology and its role in providing transparency to the ultimate stakeholder, the taxpayer? I think that's a fantastic question. I mean, it's happening everywhere, right? So in land management, in assessments, in the taxes that we pay, that's showing up quite a bit. In terms of accountability, we're seeing it in things like roadway maintenance, right? Pothole tracking and responsiveness. I think that's great. I think, Omar, you could probably talk a little bit about the ability for, some of the construction progress tracking and things like that to ensure. I mean, some of these big mega projects, the budgets are so huge, and the public deserves to know, when things are trending to be, complete, I think about the military hospital that was built in Denver. I think it was some years ago, where it just like exceeded the budget by like 2 or 3 times or something like that, maybe even more. Like the public should know before things get completely out of hand that whether they're trending or not. And Omar can talk a little bit about the technology.
Yeah, I think going back to construction project delivery technology, I guess a lot of times, you have like a supervisor who's just supervising a company that's just obligated to make sure, everything's being done in compliance, all the quantities, all money, everything being spent on the construction is actually being spent in the right place. So there's no overrun quantities, there's no, I guess, just something that, raise a red flag. And using technology just to have all the stakeholders in one platform, would it be a GC, would it be a project owner at the county, would it be a project owner at the construction management firm, just to connect all of them in one platform that allows them to, view the real-time data, and, everyone sees all the same information. I think, that will eliminate any kind of, activities that might allow to people just maybe cheat or maybe overpay something or something like that. So it keeps people accountable, and it creates a good track of record of all the construction activities that happen, and it gives everyone some kind of thought about, okay, I'm being recording something. It's a taxpayer money. I'm paying for a GC, for example, using the taxpayer money, and then I have to make sure everything that I pay is actually what's out there, I guess, that we either built or invoice for or something like that.
Omar, you still have some time. So if you'd like to share any of the thoughts, what you're working on and innovations in the civil infrastructure space, feel free to share.
Yeah. So again, when we when we speak to cities and counties, and I think some of them, I was shocked that a lot of them still use software from the 90s. I mean, they have hundreds of millions of dollars in construction and program management, and they're still using the old way of doing it. Just Excel sheets, papers, and just volumes of construction plans, being stored in like a big storage room. So, I think going back to pushing for maybe lobbying for new technologies, I think is going to be a challenge. And then I think we as private companies, and would it be consulting companies or construction companies or startup technology companies, I think we all have to maybe advocate for this change. I think one of the things that I have noticed, that if the tech or maybe the change comes from outside, from private companies into the government, I think we have seen some good feedback for the use of technology. So I think we just have to keep pushing for this change, from private companies or maybe technology startup.
Great. No, thanks for sharing.
And I think one thing that I notice also is, some people are actually, afraid of, new changes. They just think about, okay, I have been doing it the same way for like 10 years, 20 years, why do I have to use technology now? I have been, we've been building highways and, projects, multi-million-dollar projects, using Excel sheets. Why do I have to use technology now? So that, the fear of change from a lot of the end user is what's kind of also challenging. And I think we just have to keep pushing for it, change the mindset and change the culture.
Great. Anything else that you'd like to share on this panel?
No, I think this is probably about, the whole experience we wanted to share.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to thank both Michael and Omar for joining us today. If you would like to reach out to them directly, I'll let them share their contact information here in the chat. If you don't mind, Omar, do you mind if I share your email address?
For sure.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and share Omar's email address. And then Michael, would you be okay with me sharing your email address in the chat for anybody to reach out to you directly? If anybody would like to reach out to Michael, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat, and then I'm happy to make an introduction. Wonderful. Well, Omar, if there's nothing else you'd like to share, we can go ahead and end the session early. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining, and Omar and Michael for being great panelists. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.